make me wanna shout.
Hey Bills fans, Bills Mafia, Bills Draft Prospect Watchers, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Circling the Wagons podcast, the only podcast that won't retire on you out of nowhere in the middle of your contract. I'm your host, Nate, and we are continuing our off-season series of podcasts before the NFL draft. If you hadn't had a chance, check out our last podcast where Zach and I discuss anything and everything having to do with potential first-round quarterbacks. We break down Rosen, Darnold, Mayfield, Allen, Jackson, and Rudolph. But in this episode, we are covering all of the other positions of need in players that could be available in the first or possibly the second round if they fall. I put up a Twitter poll a couple of weeks ago, and if you're not following us on Twitter, we are at CTW Pod. That's Charlie Tango Whiskey Pod. The poll asked basically, what's the biggest need for the Buffalo Bills besides quarterback? And it was overwhelmingly linebacker and wide receiver, which are clearly needs. We go over these positions along with defensive tackle, with the imminent retirement of Kyle Williams the next year, and really almost no depth behind him and Star Talulele. So we also go over interior offensive linemen like centers and guards, which brings us to our next topic, the sudden retirement of Richie Incognito. Now, in a series of random and weird tweets, Incognito went from firing his agent to tweeting, "Is it football season yet?" to tweeting the NFLPA to let them know that I'm done, quote unquote, with a tongue out emoji. He used a lot of emojis this last week or so, but it is now official. Richie Incognito is retired. Even though LaShawn McCoy offered him $300,000 to keep playing, he is retired. He reported that to the Buffalo News. And I don't have a ton to say about Incognito, but I thought Thad Brown tweeted it out and summed it up pretty well. He wrote, "The last time Richie Incognito left the NFL, he was shamed, ostracized as a pariah. If he is truly leaving the NFL again, this time he'll depart a locker room leader, Pro Bowler, and an important piece of a team that ended a 17-year playoff drought. It's a damn good comeback story. Hashtag Bills." And I think that he pretty much sums it out for all of us. One thing I wanted to say about all of this is it was very unfortunate the time that the huge controversy came around with Jonathan Martin and Richie Incognito when he was with the Dolphins. And I mean, Richie Incognito had a history of doing some very weird things as far as penalties, suspensions, or fines or whatever. And he had just a history of being in trouble, and everywhere he went, he seemed to find it. And when the thing came out with Jonathan Martin and him potentially bullying him, it was right in the middle of the anti-bullying movement. And I never felt bad for Incognito per se, but he caught it right at the wrong moment. And he became the face of bullying. And I'm sure we've all dealt with bullying one way or another. I mean, who hasn't really at this point? But he became the face of it, which I thought was a little unfair because at least in sports, it's usually a little bit different. Usually when there's a group of guys or whatever, there's a lot of ribbing and joking around and making fun of each other. And, when that whole thing came out, you didn't really know which way to turn it. Obviously, everyone jumped on the bandwagon of saying that Incognito was a piece of garbage and he shouldn't have done what he did to Jonathan Martin. And it sounded like he used some racial slurs and whatnot, which obviously is wrong. But if you notice, I remember paying attention to this closely. If you notice, at the time, a lot of players were defending Richie Incognito, and no one stood up for Jonathan Martin, and it was very telling. I'm just as suspect of this as anyone else, But when you hear stories about this, you automatically jump to a conclusion and you say that this person's bad or this person's good. I mean, that's kind of what the news does nowadays, right? So I jumped on that bandwagon of thinking Richie Incognito was a piece of garbage. But maybe he really wasn't, because, he found another, he was able to get another position with the Bills and restart his NFL career, and he became a Pro Bowler and he was a good player. And you really never hear anyone say anything bad about Richie Incognito from the team standpoint. And even the accusation that was made from him from the Jacksonville Jaguar offensive lineman that said that he used racial slur. I mean, Deion Dawkins immediately went to bat for Richie Incognito, which, you know what, if they didn't like him, if they didn't believe in him, if they didn't respect him as a teammate, and later in the locker room, there wouldn't be people lining up as soon as that happened to defend him. And it seems like in every instance they have so far. So not saying that he doesn't have his issues, which he clearly does. But, just keep that in mind that, sometimes when the public opinion is one way, maybe it's actually the other way. But anyway, enough about that. With the untimely retirement of Eric Wood earlier this year, now Incognito, and the trade of Cordy Glenn earlier, you literally have lost the best 3 offensive linemen on the roster within 4 months, in an offensive line that really wasn't amazing to begin with. So I asked Zach to talk about interior linemen in this podcast to begin with, but I firmly believe now, this last week, that the Bills will draft at least 2 offensive linemen at some point during the draft. So real quick, we recorded the podcast, and Zach forgot to mention the Ohio State center Billy Price in his second tier of offensive linemen. He wanted me to let everyone know this about the following with Billy Price. Let's see. He's a center for Ohio State. Price won the Remington Trophy as the nation's top center in 2017 and was a unanimous first-team All-American. He started each game as a senior, tying Pat Elfine for the Buckeyes record with 55 straight starts. And if you know anything about Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, they love guys that are seniors, and they love guys that don't have injury histories, and 55 straight starts is something that would definitely be appealing to him. Now, he did suffer a partially torn pectoral at the combine, so he has been dropped on a lot of draft boards, reportedly. Right now, he's, at least based on NFL.com, he's supposed to be a second rounder. He, quote unquote, quote, plays like a wildling at times with tremendous explosiveness, strength, and almost excessive initial charge. Side note, I don't know if this draft report is going to be interesting in like 8 years after Game of Thrones is done. I just thought that was funny, a wildling. He has freaky strength and explosiveness, and he has a mean streak that will not be an issue at the next level. And, okay, I'm reading. It says in the Sources Tell Us section, an AFC team pro personnel director was quoted to say, "Man, he is a different kind of guy altogether. He has a lot of edge for sure. Love his toughness and his grit. And wait until you see him at the combine. He might hit 40 on the bench, and he's going to run well too," which is kind of funny because he didn't participate in the combine really at all because he partially tore his pectoral. But anyways, with that, let's continue our draft preview podcast with all of the non-QB positions of need. I'm joined again by Zach. Zach, how's it going?
Not bad, Nate. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And we're continuing our draft series. Now, I posted a poll on Twitter. If you're not following us, follow us at CTW Pod. And I wanted to know what positions people thought that we should cover on this podcast, this draft edition podcast, that had to do with, if the Bills stayed put in the first round, they didn't draft someone. If they kept both first round picks, obviously they would take a player that was either at a position of need that wasn't quarterback. So I have a couple of positions that I asked you to do a little bit of scouting work on, guys that the Bills might either take later in the first round or possibly the second round if they drop. And one of the first positions that people wanted to talk about was wide receiver. So do you have a few wide receivers that you would like to talk about, or guys that you saw that might fit that mold?
Absolutely. There's a couple first round wide receivers that I've seen that I really love. My number one wide receiver in this draft is Calvin Ridley, without a doubt. I'm an Alabama guy. If you listen to the part one of the podcast, you would have heard that. Calvin Ridley's an outstanding route runner. His quickness is incredible. He didn't test well at the combine in regards to jumps, which was pretty surprising to a lot of scouts.
Is he a tall guy?
He is marginally tall. He is a outside receiver, but can also play the slot. The slot, he would be a mismatch all over the field, depending on who's covering him, whether it's a safety or a linebacker. He didn't get as many looks as he should have at Alabama because Jalen Hurts just cannot throw the football that well. In the national championship game, you saw when Tua came in, he was able to throw the ball all over the field, and it opened up the offense. Calvin Ridley got a bunch more looks. He is going to be a mismatch. He is a surefire wide receiver 2, and probably would be a wide receiver 1 on most NFL teams.
You see, we spoke last podcast about Brian Daboll. Do you think he would look at this guy as his guy if he's available at 12 and the Bills decide they can't move up for a quarterback?
He most likely will be available at 12. I think that he would be a definite target if for some reason he fell to 22. At 12, I think you can get a little bit better value at other positions of need for the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
But I would think that Ridley will come off the board somewhere between pick 15 to 25, somewhere in there.
Gotcha.
Another first-round wide receiver, I believe, it will be Cortland Sutton from SMU.
From where?
SMU.
What is that, Southern Miss?
No. Southern Methodist University. Wow. Yeah.
College football powerhouse then?
Absolutely. He is your prototypical outside receiver. He is a monster. He has a huge catch radius, big-time jump ball player. He has constantly on film had corners and safeties draped all over him and still gone up and made the catch. He will be a mismatch. He's not Calvin Johnson, obviously, but he is a guy that will be a red zone threat immediately coming into the league. He is a beast.
Just because of his size
Yes.
and his abilities?
And his ability to leap, his ability to go up and catch the football in contested situations.
Is it just that he went to SMU? Is that his biggest knock right now?
Yeah. I mean, he is from a small school. Anytime any prospect is from a small school, you think about that. You think about the level of competition, but
Like Josh Allen, like we talked about.
exactly. But no, he is a very good player.
Okay.
A couple guys, maybe round 2.
So we're talking really those first 2 guys are outside guys, maybe possibly a slot receiver
Yes.
for Calvin Ridley.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And now I have a couple more guys that, I mean, wide receiver.
How about speed real quick for those first 2 guys? Because the Bills, I feel, right now they have Kelvin Benjamin, who's a big guy. He can high point a ball, he can jump, but he's not a speed threat at all. The Bills do not have a speed threat on their offense. Would either of those 2 guys be faster than what they have right now?
Yes.
For sure. Okay.
Kelvin Benjamin is as slow as molasses. It is hard to watch. Both of these guys are much more shifty, much faster than Kelvin.
Okay.
There are a couple other guys that may fall into the back half of round 1, early part of round 2. DJ Chark, he is a receiver from LSU. He is 6'3". He ran a 4.3 40. He's very fast. He has really good hands. He's a player that the Bills that would immediately upgrade the Bills receiving core. And DJ Moore from Maryland. Another perk of DJ Moore is he also returned punts in college. So that's an added bonus. But DJ Moore is more of a slot guy. He's a great route runner, really quick. And he's been steadily climbing up draft boards that I've seen for his combine performances.
So you follow the draft closely. I mean, you have for a number of years. You followed it last year when Zay Jones came out. Did you like Zay Jones coming out?
I did.
Okay. When you talk about these top 4 guys, you talked about Ridley, Sutton, and Moore, and who's the other guy?
Chark.
Okay, gotcha. Where would you put Zay Jones? Because Zay Jones is more of a slot receiver, I'm guessing, right? So the Bills probably don't need another slot receiver. Would you say that these guys have ability better than Zay, or they're at that level in the second round?
I would say at that level or a little bit above.
A little bit above. Okay.
Yes.
So we're talking to guys, no matter what, they'd probably still be an upgrade.
Absolutely.
At what they have right now. Okay. Those top 4 guys. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, who's the Bills' other outside receiver at this point, besides Kelvin and Zay?
It's Andre Holmes.
And who knows where Zay is at this point.
I know.
Mentally and physically.
Well, he did show up on Twitter saying that, it was his birthday. He said thanks for everyone.
Yeah.
Everything's okay. So, yeah. No charges were filed. But, yeah, no, I mean, you're right. They need help no matter what.
Yes.
They need to draft a guy in the first few rounds in either day 2 or day 1, so.
There are wide receivers a position that has a lot of capable guys that can come in and help a team. So if they aren't completely enamored with one of the first 2 guys, Sutton or Ridley, to wait to day 2 or even the early part of day 3 to draft a receiver isn't the worst thing in the world.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any speed threat guys that maybe aren't like the 6'2" sort of guys, but just are burners like a Deshaun Jackson or who was it last year? John Ross. Anyone like that might fall to the second or third round? Or those guys
the guy that I would say for a speed guy. I mean, yeah, he's tall, but DJ Chark ran incredible. He ran better than anybody thought he would at the combine. I mean, 4.3, 4.40 at 6'3". That's real fast. Mm-hmm. I mean, he is. There's another guy, Washington, Dante Pettis. He's pretty quick, pretty fast.
Is he more of a second or third round guy?
Yes, okay. Definitely. I think the only first round guys will be Ridley and Sutton, possibly DJ Moore at the back end of the first.
Okay.
Everybody else, Chark and Pettis and all of those guys, the further down the list I go, they're all second and beyond.
Gotcha. But what's nice to hear is that all 4 of those guys, it sounds like, would be an upgrade over what they currently have.
100%.
100%, okay.
I mean, Andre Holmes he's been in the NFL for a while. I mean, he's serviceable. These guys are absolutely upgrades.
Good, okay. I mean, how far you could go down pretty far though to be an upgrade, right? Like,
yeah.
We just mentioned those top 4 guys, but we might be able to get guys in the 3rd or 4th round that could potentially be an upgrade over Andre Holmes. Okay,
definitely. It's one of the
it's one of the biggest needs that the Bills have right now.
It's one of the deeper positions in this draft.
Is it really? Okay.
I mean, there's a couple top guys, obviously, but there's some depth there.
Okay. So unlike some of those positions you were saying, like defensive end doesn't have great depth, wide receiver actually does.
Yeah.
Running back does too this year.
Running back does, and there's some other positions too that we may be ending up talking about on this list here.
What about linebacker? What are some of the guys? I know linebacker is a huge need for the Bills. They just lost Preston Brown, which I wasn't really impressed with, to be quite honest. He was serviceable. I mean, he was just steady. Nothing great. He's no Reuben Foster.
Yeah.
But he was okay. So, I mean, who are guys that you could see in the first couple of rounds that could come in and be an upgrade at that position and be able to thrive in the Bills' defense?
I think that if the Bills stay at 12, they have a shot at either Roquan Smith from Georgia or Tremaine Edmonds from Virginia Tech. Both of these guys are inside backers. They are very, very, very athletic. Tremaine Edmonds is 19 years old.
Wow.
He's going to turn 20 before the season starts, but he is very young, very raw, but his athletic ability is incredible. Roquan Smith, you saw if you watched the college football playoff, he goes sideline to sideline probably better than any other backer in college football. He's a beast. He makes every tackle. He's fast. Those guys are probably going to go no later than 15 both of them.
Wow.
They'll be probably between 10 and 15 somewhere. A couple other guys that I believe will go in the first round, Rashaan Evans from Alabama and Leighton Vander Esch, a less-known name from Boise State. Both of these guys will definitely end up going in the first round too, and will definitely be an upgrade for the Bills defensively.
Are those both inside backers
Yep,
too?
they're all inside backers.
Gotcha. Are they? I don't know if you know this off the top of your head. Are they 3-4, 4-3, or does it even matter in your opinion? Like, if you can be a 3-4 inside linebacker, can you also be the 4-3 middle linebacker? Because that's what the Bills run most of the time.
They run a 4-3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that most of these guys will fit seamlessly. Roquan will be your prototypical middle. Edmonds, Rashaan Edmonds, and Vander Esch are more of your either weak or strong side backers, but they're all fits for 4-3s, no doubt. They'll come in, they'll be able to help the Bills replace Preston Brown.
Yeah. What the Bills really need is a guy that is athletic and that can actually be used in pass coverage. Because right now they have Matt Milano, who's actually he was a really good rookie this last year. He was good in pass coverage. He was good at, defending the run. So on nickel situations, which most teams are in most of the time on defense, they need at least one guy that can be in there with Matt Milano. Because before it was Preston Brown and it was really pretty rough. So they just need that guy that can go in with them. And so it sounds like those four guys could easily be that guy. I mean, are any of them good at pass coverage, or does it depend on the guy?
Roquan was asked numerous times to cover backs out of the backfield and tight ends down the seam. He's able to do it. Edmonds is an athletic freak. He just is. He's 19, like I said. He can cover anybody. The other two guys are a little bit more questionable in that respect, but they're also going to go later in the first. Mm-hmm. So,
but either of these guys would be an upgrade to what the Bills currently have. So that's good. Okay, so those are their top four linebackers you see that could be available either 12 or 22 or possibly, maybe even in the second round, depending on how the draft goes, especially with the way quarterbacks will be flying off the board.
I have a little bit of an under the radar guy.
Linebacker?
Shaquem
Griffin.
Well.
Griffin?
Yeah, he's not under the radar. I mean, he's a beast.
Yeah.
But he's one of the guys that the Bills could obviously take in round 2, 3, maybe possibly 4, depending on...
You think he's going to drop? Because...
I think he'll probably go in the 3rd.
For people that don't know, am I pronouncing that?
Shaquem Griffin. Yeah.
Shaquem Griffin. Yeah. He is the draft prospect that was born without a hand.
Yes.
On one of his arms, and he's a monster, right? I mean, he's just
he's from Central Florida. He went to the combine and had a prosthetic hand and benched 22 reps on the bench press with basically one arm. It was incredible. He is an athletic freak. The only downside is obviously that he doesn't have a second hand, and no matter how you slice it, that is going to be a knock on him. I think that is the only reason that he would fall to round 2 or round 3. He would be a first-round player if he had two hands.
I don't know. I kind of feel like I have to tread this one lightly.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
But and I mean no disrespect. Obviously, the kid's a great story. Have you seen any plays where he missed a guy because he didn't have that hand or anything like that? I mean, was I could see that being a slight issue, maybe in pass coverage, trying to tip a ball. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
He is a tackling machine.
Yeah,
it doesn't affect him tackling at all, in my opinion. I mean, he gets to every single tackle that he could possibly get to.
Is he more of a middle linebacker or outside linebacker?
Outside.
Okay.
And he will bring such a presence to whatever team he goes to. He's a great kid by all accounts, and he is definitely a guy to look for. My down-the-line middle linebacker is Josie Jewell from Iowa.
Okay.
He is also a tackling machine, you can see him go head-to-head with Saquon Barkley in the Iowa-Penn State game over and over and over again. And he is a middle linebacker. He wins some. Saquon makes him look like a fool in others. But he is a hell of a player. And he'll probably be down round 3, round 4, somewhere in there. So that's just another name to look for.
Well, Saquon has made a few people look like fools this last season, right? So that's not necessarily a knock on him.
That was just the one game that I watched where I was like, wow, this matchup is incredible. They would just basically go head-to-head almost every single play.
And he wasn't completely outmatched,
No.
though, you're saying?
No.
So, okay. Gotcha. So easily an upgrade even at round 3 or 4.
Yep.
This linebacker, did you say that was a deeper position or it was just a normal in depth?
I would say normal depth.
Okay. Compared to most drafts.
Yes. I would say anything below that, you're kind of grasping at straws a little bit. But, I mean, like every draft, they have diamonds in the rough. You can find them.
Absolutely. All right, that takes us to our next position, defensive tackle. And the Bills right now, they just signed Star Talulele from the Carolina Panthers. They brought Kyle Williams is coming back for another season, but Kyle Williams is like, I don't know if he's 400 years old, but he's older.
Right around there.
And, we all love Kyle Williams, so that's not a knock against him. The guy's had an amazing career. But let's be honest, I mean, you're just not the same guy at 36, 37 that you were at 23. I mean, hey, that's life, baby. That's us, hey. So the Bills really have to think long-term, not only – I wouldn't even say an upgrade position this year, but the Bills like to rotate a lot with the defensive linemen.
Absolutely.
So who's a guy that might slip to 12 or 22 this year in the draft that the Bills fans should keep in mind?
There are a lot of guys in that range. Like pick 12, there's a guy that if he's there and the Bills don't move, he would be an outstanding pickup. Vita Vea from Washington. He is a monster. He's a run stopper and he gets pressure on the quarterback more than a guy should at his size. He is.
How big is he? Is he like 320?
Yeah, he is a monster.
Yeah.
So he would be. I've seen him mocked a lot to Washington at 13. Some to the Bills. I've seen that too.
Okay.
A couple guys down at 22 range would probably be Deron Payne from Alabama, Taven Bryan from Florida, and Maurice Hurst from Michigan. And
so he's dropping because he was originally supposed to be one of the best defensive tackles, right?
I think that he'll be chosen right around 20.
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
Even with his heart condition or whatever they found?
Yeah. So
at the combine?
He went to the combine, had to go through a physical, failed his physical because they found a heart murmur, I believe. And then he did not participate at all in the combine. At Michigan's pro day, he had a doctor come and he was cleared. So once he was cleared, he was able to work out, do all the workouts, all the testing, and I don't believe it's going to affect his draft stock anymore now that he's been cleared. But yeah, that was a definite made scouts and everybody take pause because they were thinking, I mean, this guy's a monster. He's a great player.
So he wasn't able to work out at the combine at all then?
Nope, not at all.
Okay.
He was able to interview there. He was interviewing for teams there,
wow.
and that's it. And then he had to.
That could have cost him millions of dollars. I mean,
yeah, he had one shot. Most of these guys get more than one shot. They go to the combine, they work out, they don't run as good of a 40 as they would like. Then they go back to their college and they have a pro day, and they could run it again in front of scouts. Both times count. This guy had one shot because he missed out because of this heart murmur or heart issue. And, I mean, I'm super happy for him that he's able to come back, and I don't think it's going to hurt his draft stock much now.
Gotcha.
But, yeah, around pick 22, those guys will probably all fall right around there.
Who's the guy from Alabama that you mentioned?
Deron Payne.
Deron Payne. Now, the issue I have with Alabama defensive linemen is that they're part of a system that's so good that I rarely see them succeed in the NFL, I feel. Whereas linebackers from Alabama tend to do well, the defensive linemen just haven't seemed to. I'm trying to think of who.
They don't pop. They don't pop, but they are technically and fundamentally sound players, and they come in and they help a football team. I mean, I know what you're saying. There hasn't been any like monster jump off the page like
star
but I mean, Daron Payne is a hell of a football player.
Okay.
He can come in. I mean, like you said, the Bills like to rotate their defensive linemen. He would add another dynamic piece to that rotation.
Okay, cool. All right, one of the last positions that was brought up on the Twitter poll was interior offensive linemen. Now, the Bills just lost their center, Eric Wood, this offseason to retirement. Kind of came out of the blue. He didn't want to retire. He was forced to retire because of a neck injury he sustained during the season. And so the Bills have Ryan Groy as a backup center who performed pretty well in Wood's absence in the 2016 season, but he's on a one-year deal. The Bills need interior offensive line help. Richie Incognito, first of all, he's just, especially with the recent reports of him firing his agent over Twitter, and the guy's a powder keg to begin with.
He is a loose cannon.
He is one of their best offensive linemen, but he's also older too. I mean, I think he's 35. I mean, the Bills need help there. They have Vlad Dukas on the other side.
Yikes.
Which is... Exactly. So the Bills need interior offensive linemen. I would say they need tackle too, but since the draft doesn't seem that deep, I think the top guy is going to come off in the first 10, 15 picks. So are there any center or guard positional guys in that first round, early second round that the Bills could target?
Absolutely.
With one of their picks? Because they won't get Quentin Nelson?
Quentin Nelson is probably my favorite prospect in this draft. He is a mean player. He bench presses defensive linemen. He's a guard from Notre Dame. He will be gone in the first. He won't drop past pick 8. And if he's there at pick 9 and the Niners don't pick him, I will die.
You got to become a Bills fan after that, man. Come over here. We have candy, you know.
Some more realistic guys for the Bills in the range where they're drafting. I would say more along the lines of pick 22 than pick 12. Isaiah Wynn from Georgia is a guard. He's probably the number 2 guard in this class. He worked out well. He is smaller in size but quicker guard-wise. So I'm not sure about the Bills' offense if they run a lot of pulls from their guards.
We'll see with the new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, true. And Alabama, he did.
He did? So, okay. Oh, okay. And he saw him firsthand, obviously, in the national championship game.
Absolutely.
Could he possibly be one of the reasons why Georgia had such a good running attack?
Well, yeah.
One of the reasons?
He definitely helped. He didn't hurt, but the talent those two backs had was pretty incredible.
Okay.
Center that the Bills could look at, center/guard. He could play both. James Daniels from Iowa. He's probably top of round 2, middle of round 2 guy. He's just technically sound. He's very good at what he does. He's a young player, obviously. But to replace your second-string center, like you said, he's a definite upgrade. Mm-hmm. And then the other guy that I want to talk about is another guy from a small school, but he is the exact opposite body size-wise as Isaiah Wynn. He is a monster. Is Will Hernandez from UTEP. He's probably also bottom first, top second somewhere, but he's another guy who's super mean. I liked watching all of these guys on film. I mean, normally you think, oh, great, like I have to watch the offensive line. That's fun. But these guys maul people, and it's a very, very good, top-heavy offensive guard/center class, in my opinion.
What is UTEP? Big 12?
No. They are... I'm not even sure what conference they play in. It's a smaller
USA conference or something like that. Conference USA.
Something like that.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I guess the reason why I ask is does any of it have to do with the conference play, the people that he's playing against? Because if you're 340 pounds and you're playing against defensive tackles that are 220,
He came into the postseason All-Star games and workouts, and that was a knock. And then he showed super well against guys from Georgia, from all the big schools, and he came in and he performed great.
Did he play in the Senior Bowl?
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
He was outstanding. And I don't think you can go wrong there. I have a guy who's a little bit of a draft crush of mine. Bottom of the second, top of the third guy. I'm not sure where the Bills are picking, but in the third. Are they up top? Or?
They're the Browns pick in the third, so the first
beautiful.
pick of the third. Yeah,
I don't know why I didn't know that. That was dumb. That's what they got for Tyrod.
Yeah.
But a guy that I really, really like is...
Maybe you should re-listen to the first podcast.
Yeah, whoops.
Part 1. Yeah, go ahead.
Austin Corbett is a guard from Nevada who isn't being talked about as much as these other guys, but he will come in, and he's a mean player too.
Yeah.
When I saw him on film, he popped off for me, popped off the page, popped off the tape. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually surprised that when I'm looking at mock drafts and stuff like that, he's not going till the bottom of 2, top of 3. So he would be very good value for the Bills there.
Is there a lot of guard depth, like interior lineman depth in this?
After that, no.
No, okay, gotcha. So if you don't get this guy...
If you don't get the cream of the crop, like if you're not finding a guard in the top 2 rounds, top of the third, I'm not really sure what you're even going to get. I mean, you're going to get a rotational player probably at best, I would think. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, those are my guys, my interior lineman guys.
Cool, man. You hear that, Bills fans? Those are guys that all positions, wide receiver, linebacker, defensive tackle, center guard prospects that we could expect if the Bills somehow don't land a monster trade to get the quarterback of the future, and they still have to take, some good players out there. You can't just punt on everything. So, okay, here's the last question I got for you to end part 2 of the podcast. So you've watched Brian Daboll as offensive coordinator in Alabama. You're a big Alabama fan. I mean, what are your thoughts on him? When he came to the Bills, there were a lot of negatives with him because he hadn't had success in the National Football League as an offensive coordinator with Miami, Kansas City, Cleveland. I mean, mind you, you're not talking the best quarterbacks out there, and obviously quarterback is important. I mean, you've seen Alabama's offense before Brian Daboll took over and after. I mean, is he just as good as a Steve Sarkisian or whatever? Or was he better? Or, I mean, should Bills fans be cautiously optimistic, or is it a wait and see sort of thing?
I think Bills fans should definitely be cautiously optimistic, especially if they get the quarterback that should be a franchise changer. Daboll, for me, is a better OC than Steve Sarkisian. I'm not a big Steve Sarkisian guy. You kind of saw what happened in Atlanta this year a little bit.
Yeah.
The way that their offense kind of dropped off since Kyle Shanahan left. I think Brian Daboll is going to come in and coordinate the Bills' offense very well. He has LaShawn McCoy, who everybody knows is just all-world. That's going to help. He has familiarity with really good running backs at Alabama, and he knows how to get the best out of them.
Good run blocking schemes
absolutely.
And stuff like that.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest knocks, I think, against Rick Dennison last year as a Bills offensive coordinator was that he wanted to play his offense and that he wanted to run his offense, and he didn't care if the guys that were in there, even though they were best talent-wise, he didn't start them because they didn't fit his scheme. Like there was like John Miller, who was his third year last year. He started his first 2 seasons under Rex Ryan, where the Bills had a very good rushing attack. And Rick Dennison, through the beginning of the year, decided he was going to run his own scheme. The Bills were not good at running the ball. Bench John Miller. And I guess I'm just wondering if you think Brian Daboll is the kind of offensive coordinator that would get the best out of his players, coach to his players, as opposed to, no, this is the scheme, it's concrete, this is what we do.
I think that he absolutely is a guy that adapts his offense to the players that he has. I'm of the opinion that if you don't do that as a coach, you're not doing your job.
It happens a lot of the time, though.
It's pretty crazy.
Not just to knock on Rick Dennison, even though I don't think he was a good coordinator or coach necessarily, but a lot of the guys do that. It's not just him.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. If you're not coaching to your players' strengths, what are you doing?
It's very old school.
Yeah, well,
like Rex Ryan would do that, like his defense, like I've had success. This is the only way to do it,
Yeah, I'm definitely more of a new school thinker when it comes to coaching and analytics and all of that. And you see the older coaches in the league come out and be like, they just put down analytics totally. John Gruden. I'm gonna say this. I'm not really sure what the Raiders are doing this offseason.
Yeah.
He is letting go of guys that will help his team win. He wants the NFL to go back to 1998, the last time he was coaching. He's poo-pooing analytics, and I'm like, it's just not the way that the NFL is going. And these guys are almost like dinosaurs. If you're not adapting your offense or your defense, or even your special teams for that matter, to the guys you have in that locker room, you're doing the team, the city, and the fans a disservice, in my opinion. So I think Brian Daboll is going to be just fine for the Bills. I think he's going to come in. I think he's going to see what he's got. They're going to get their quarterback this year. I firmly believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to go in and they're going to put in an offense that obviously headline shady, and then go from there with the guys that they have.
So let me get this straight. Based on the last podcast where we talked about quarterbacks, this podcast where we talked about other players and Brian Daboll, the Bills will, like you said, they're going to draft a quarterback. All of the top 6 quarterbacks are definitely better than Tyrod Taylor. Brian Daboll is a better coordinator than Rick Dennison, so we should expect a 13-3 season next season for the Buffalo Bills.
I didn't say that. I mean, they should be...
It's pretty much exactly what you said, if I'm reading the tea leaves.
They should be cautiously optimistic that this coaching staff that they have in place is going to better the football in Buffalo for years to come.
So you like this front office and coaching staff?
Sounds like. So far. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, what's not to like? Sean McDermott came in. They traded a bunch of guys away that everybody thought was going to help the Bills this year. They thought it was almost a throwaway year. They end the drought. Then they have all this draft capital. I mean, the Bills have to be one of the most exciting teams come draft night that in the entire NFL with all their draft ammunition. Nobody knows what they're going to do. I mean, people have guessed that they're going to go up and get a quarterback, trying to, but no one knows. And they could literally do anything because they have the capital to do that. The arrow of the franchise is pointing up. So that should be a refreshing thought for fans from Buffalo.
Wow, you heard it here from a 49ers fan, no less, that the Bills have nowhere to go but up. Wow, great. Man, if that doesn't get you pumped for I am so pumped for the draft now, man. I'm ready to go. I'm quarter chub right here. This is good.
I also want to add a stipulation to that. Until Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, until that changes, it's going to be tough for the Bills to do anything more than wild card teams, in my opinion. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
You think it will end eventually, right? They won't.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a robot that we know. I mean, Brady might be at this point, but
it's
who
debatable.
knows?
Yeah.
Belichick definitely is.
All right, Zach. Thanks again for joining us on this second part of the Draft Podcast editions. Pleasure to talk to you. Where can they find you again on Twitter?
My Twitter handle is @CALax12. And thanks for having me, Nate.
Yeah, no problem.
Go Niners and Jimmy GQ.
So for me, Nate, go Bills. Thanks for listening, guys. Remember to check out part 1 if you haven't. And also, don't forget to watch the movie Draft Day, the 2014 movie Draft Day. Zach and I we'll be doing a special edition of the podcast where we will be discussing this movie, what we thought about it, its realisticness, or
realness.
Realness. Oh, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. And let us know your thoughts. So watch that movie before next week, and we'll talk about it soon. Thanks, guys. Thanks again for listening. Thank you for listening to the Circling the Wagons podcast. Download and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast service. Email us at ctwpod@gmail.com. That's Charlie Tango Whiskey Pod at gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at CTWPod. And most importantly, go Bills.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.